Scrum Master. There's lots of different ways when we talk to people that they kind of get their first job. Catherine's going to talk about some of her experience. Haley will talk from helping people get hired and going through their early career stages. Kim, from being on the other side, I forgot the exact number. I think it was a metric ton of Scrum Masters that you've helped, that you've interviewed through the years of doing some of the world's largest agile transformations. What is about?
It was a slightly less clean version of that, but yes.
Yeah, but we'll keep this for the most part PG rated, but even though that might not be as fun, but so yeah, we have some really interesting perspectives here. And one thing that I really, really love is that I've got some just amazingly talented women in this group and on this panel. And so it's a real honor to be able to do and bring the talent that we have here to this community. And we've got quite a few people that are signed up. I imagine we're going to have quite a few more that will be watching this recording. And I promise I am not cloning myself. And so there are not 15 Chris's that will pop up. So again, if you want to change your name, that would be great. Otherwise, let's get going. So again, my name is Chris, and don't worry about that too much. You'll get to know me a little bit better, but I do want to introduce the members of my panel. So joining me today from Antelo Agility, having led some of the world's largest agile transformations from various sides of the table in those transformations, Kim Antelo. Kim, do you want to give a brief hello and talk a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Hi, Chris. So all kinds of different sides of the highly regulated industries you can see on this profile here, whether it's credit, healthcare, aviation, and then also in the last couple of years, being able to work with hospitals doing surgery, large manufacturing, even children's clothing wear. So some really awesome things that I've had the opportunity to take advantage of. And yeah, so excited to talk about this topic. Perfect.
And then the other two, and the only reason I don't have better slides is because I didn't give them adequate time to prepare, which is my fault. I have Haley Blackburn. Haley has been in the Birmingham community. Some that are joining from Birmingham Partners will recognize Haley. She's worked closely with Innovate Birmingham through a lot of different boot camps. She's now working with BBVA, and as of 2 weeks ago, has joined Team Sagayo, helping us build and boost and get even better at our training services and figure out how someone's going to have to teach me how to use Instagram because I do not know how to do that. So, and I'm told that it's going to be important to help build our market. So thankfully I've got some wonderful people helping. Haley, you want to give a brief introduction to yourself?
Sure. I'm Haley, and I am currently working at BBVA and Sagayo. At BBVA, I am in kind of a unique role. My title is business analyst, but I act more as product owner, just based on the project I'm working on. And before that, I worked for Innovate Birmingham. Hopefully most of you have heard of Innovate Birmingham, but I was the director of engagement. So I helped students land their first job. And then I've worked for another training program before that to provide those same services for students. So been in tech for, I guess, about 6-7 years now, and have worked on agile teams and also helped those looking for that first job.
Thank you, Haley, and super glad to have on the panel. And joining us from Albany, or around Albany, New York, we'll go with there. Catherine Travis. Catherine is a phenomenal Scrum Master. She helps protect one of the coaching teams that I work with. When we go in and we're working, she's the one that helps keeps us sane and helps us focused and get better, and is just super talented. Catherine, would you take a second and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm Catherine Travis. I am a Scrum Master for Scrum Inc. So I've officially been a Scrum Master for about 4 years now, but I've been in some sort of servant leadership role for 10 plus years, helping teams becoming high performing and having them be the best that they can be. I've worked in areas of retail, pharmacy, financial, IT. And so currently, I'm actually a Scrum Master of a transformation team, which is interesting. So we're going out and we're helping folks learn Scrum. So I'm the Scrum Master of that team. And so I live in the Adirondack Mountains. So Kim's actually, she didn't mention it, but she's in the Rockies and I'm in the Adirondack. So we're always like, ooh, who has the better mountains? So yeah, I'm in the Adirondack Mountains, going strong up here. Fun fact, I'm actually 8 months pregnant. So woo! And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
And if you see Catherine step out a little bit early, that's because she has to go 2 hours to a baby appointment.
Yeah.
So thank you, and thank everyone for joining us. And again, those that will be watching, following up, thank you all for being part of this. Let's talk a little bit about where we're going and what our goals today, and then I'm going to hit a little bit. I guess actually I need to do a quick introduction myself. For those that don't know me, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sagaya Studios, an agile coach and trainer. I've been working in software development since I was in 3rd grade. So for the last 5 years, I've been writing code. Now for the last quite a few years. Started getting paid for it in 6th grade. I've been paid to manage and lead developers and software teams ever since then, and super fortunate to be able to have opportunities to learn from some of the world's best, foremost leaders in Agile and get some really amazing experience in doing that. And so my role in today is not as much to talk as to facilitate, and really kind of drive to get some insight from our panelists. We're going to talk a little bit about what being a Scrum Master looks like. We're going to talk about the interview process. So what is that experience kind of from beginning to end? What are some pitfalls? What are some kinds of questions you might expect to see? How do you land an interview? So you actually got to get in the door. So what are the things you can do to really be opening those doors and figure out how are you going to get your next interview that you can then use to get your next job, and follow up with Q&A. So I do want to make sure that this is really about making sure that our participants get value. So while we have an outline, we have goals that we're trying to hit, we want to make sure that at any point you can use, just throw some questions out. So down in the bottom panel of the Zoom webinar, you should see a Q&A button. If you click on that, you should be able to enter a question and also see other questions. So as they're coming in, and I encourage you to go ahead and start getting your questions out there. So that way we make sure that we hit them. And as you see, you can upvote if you want us to really make sure we hit something. Go ahead and do that. And the way I want to validate that you're able to see this is go ahead, start throwing some questions in there as we get going. And Josh is here and will help facilitate this. And other than that, if you can't use the Q&A, also feel free to use that chat. Just make sure you set it to all panelists, and we'll see that come in as well. And Josh is going to help make sure that all that's good to go. So that said, let's dive in and let's ask some questions. And the first question, we want to take a few minutes. Let's really look at what the role of being a Scrum Master looks like. So Catherine, you spend your day-to-day as a Scrum Master for what is not a very easy team to be a Scrum Master for. I say that as a member of that team. So talk a little bit about what the life of a Scrum Master looks like.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so classic Scrum Master aspects like removing impediments, facilitating events, helping the team become high performing, following some of those high performing patterns like swarming. But I have to say lately, and hopefully maybe some of you will resonate with this, lately I feel like though I should be protecting the team from outside interrupts, really protecting the team from themselves. And that's a really big part of being a Scrum Master, especially in this world that we're currently living in. So we're always on, right? So I'm sure a majority of you are working from home. We're not traveling as much. We're always on this computer, right? Looking at this camera. And so it becomes very challenging to get sucked into that and not take a moment to step away. And then it becomes too late and people start to get burned out. So I feel like lately, a lot of my day-to-day is protecting the team and making sure that we're working at that sustainable pace and making sure we're building in space to walk away and just shut down for a little bit. So that's what my day-to-day looks like always and currently in this new world.
Well, and Catherine, you spent a lot of time lately actually doing some Scrum Master training. Actually, you literally just came out of a Scrum Master training class that you're helping facilitate.
Yeah.
One of the things that we use in that Scrum Master training is this gem of a Scrum Master. And for those that have been through any of our training, you've likely seen this. So this is the gem of Scrum Master. These are facets of what we believe being a great Scrum Master looks like in the different aspects. Talk a little bit about the gem and how do these different characteristics come into play in your experience?
Sure. Yeah, no, for sure. So coaching, the top of that gem there. So coaching, so helping the team figure out, some best practices or what to do without dictating. So it's really about being that servant leader when you're coaching the team. Another part on here, I'd say, facilitation, right? As a Scrum Master, you're facilitating most, if not all, of the events of the Scrum events. Helping the team become hyper productive, rather. So that's really looking at patterns, ways to continuously improve. Craftspersonship. So I've been a Scrum Master in some domains that I don't know. So I've been a Scrum Master in a really heavy IT world, and I don't have any IT experience. But that doesn't mean that you can't be a Scrum Master if you don't fully know the domain. However, you just have to have empathy and actually respect the craft of that domain. So craftspersonship is really a big part of that, right? So helping the team understand the craft, helping them, if they want to go for some trainings or deep dive to help get better in their area. It's all about having empathy for that. Org is up here, which is helping the org become transformed as well. So you may be a Scrum Master of a team where the organization isn't necessarily in that agile mindset yet or have done anything in the Scrum framework. And so it's really about coaching the organization and helping them adopt that mindset and helping in the framework. So those are some things that come off to the top of my head without hitting, all of them.
So Kim, let me hear from you a little bit around this. So in your experience of looking at great Scrum Masters and working and coaching with them, what from this stands out to you? What's maybe the easiest thing to do and what's the most difficult thing out of the gem of a Scrum Master?
Well, I think that really depends on the person and what their kind of interests are. So someone who's not necessarily very keen on doing some of the product owner work, there's a lot of knowledge that you have to get to really be able to help to coach the product owner through that whole process, so business and products. Another one that is typically pretty difficult is that org change. I was talking to an Agile coach about a month ago, and they said, the Scrum Masters, they take these impediments and they see what they can do about them, but most of them really need to be dealt with at the higher level of the organization. So being able to speak, executive speak or leadership speak, whatever you need to articulate what is this problem and how is it slowing the organization down and how is it preventing us from being able to deliver on what we need. So I would say those are two of the things that I see as being harder. The other one is, when do you stick to the lines of, hey, this is Scrum, or this is Agile, or these are lean tools? And when do you need to be a little bit more flexible to make sure that you're actually hitting the outcomes of the rules that are in the Agile manifesto or in the Scrum guide, and making sure that you're being flexible to meet the needs of the organization, as opposed to just following the rules without really understanding why the rules are there.
Thank you. And we've got some wonderful questions coming in. So I actually want to take a little bit and focus on one. And Haley, this one's going to go to you. And it's a really good, it's going to be some about how to land the interview, but I think it's also important for the interview process, which will take just a little bit. And so the question, Haley, is, and this is from Jennifer, what are the ideas, skills, or talents that are essential to catch the eye of a recruiter, someone that's looking for this? And I ask you because you've worked with this a lot.
Yes. So, I mean, talking about, I guess, just Scrum in general, I saw there was a question about, do you need to be in IT? I am in the IT world, so I apologize if I revert to IT a lot. But I would say, what I tell people all the time, now that I'm not helping students anymore, I still have people that come to me for advice or resume help. And I'm friends with a lot of recruiters, so they call me all the time. Hey, I have this job. Do you know anyone? And so I think that is an example of how important networking is. And also, as far as skills, what was the question? Okay, what are some of the ideal skills or talents that are essential? So one thing that I say a lot is, beginners are going to have a list of the same skills, going back to, a software development class. That's just an easy example. Every student in the class learned the same thing. So all of their resumes are going to have these things on it. Well, that's not going to stand out if all 20 people send their resume to the same person. And so you need to do something that's going to make you stand out. And so I like to tell people to, in your jobs, your previous jobs, or if you've done any projects, write that on your resume and relate it to the job that you're applying for. So if you're applying for a job as a Scrum Master, don't lie on your resume, but tailor your resume for that job description. And so use those keywords from the job description and put them in your resume, because that's what's going to stand out. If you know JavaScript, that's just, again, the easy example. Don't put it in a bullet point at the top of your resume under your skills. If you use the word JavaScript 6 times on your resume in a project or whatever it is, then that recruiter or that person, that hiring manager, whoever it is, they know you know JavaScript. You don't have to take up space putting bulleted points. So, I mean, what I say is your resume has to stand out. Your network is huge. I've gotten all of my jobs because I knew someone. I'm working at Sagayo. Chris and I already knew each other from, my professional network.
She actually was coming to me with candidates that we have hired quite a number of them.
So, I mean, that's kind of, and I think, like Chris said, we'll get more into based on some of the questions he has, but I think that, and I know I didn't really say specific skills, but I think that just as much as the hard skills are important, so are the soft skills. To be a good Scrum Master, you have to have that communication. And so those are things that are going to stand out. So yeah, you can say you have good communication skills, but what happens during the hiring process? Are you following up on emails in a timely manner? Those types of things are going to stand out to the recruiter, the hiring manager. Are you taking initiative to, and that's, how I've gotten jobs before too, is I stay on the recruiter's radar. They may not even have anything for me yet, but I'm always in the back of their mind because, you don't have to be annoying, but a job's not just going to come to you. So.
Right. Well, I love that. What makes it different? Kim, you look like you were about to say something.
Yeah, but completely what Haley was talking about. And in many areas, you have the ability to go to Agile meetups. And even I had people who were doing a developer boot camp. They were coming to some of the Agile meetups that were in Denver, and they just happened to sit next to me on the train ride home. So we were talking about those kinds of things. And so being able to leverage those people so that when they're ready to look for a job, you can help connect them. And then also, if a lot of people who are going to those meetups are also at companies that are hiring Scrum Masters as well. So just being able to say, oh, well, our company has an opening and this is what the company is like. So like Haley was saying, leverage that network, but get out there and get into the community. I know right now we're not going to be, doing train rides with people, but at least we're still doing these virtual sessions where we can still talk to each other.
So, and I apologize. This actually isn't a question that was on the list I sent, but I'm going to pose it anyway. We're living in a very different world now, and Kim, you just brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally in networking, you would focus in your area. You were going to get a job that you would go to work, and that's becoming less and less the case. I read an article in the Birmingham Business Journal recently that talked about Birmingham being particularly well situated for this push to remote work, in that it's a relatively low cost of living place that people enjoy coming, that doesn't have the traffic of some larger cities. And we also have great internet access. So now you have literally the world. I was working in China and India last night. I am exhausted, but not because I had to be on a plane flight back. So talk about how this networking and what changes. So Catherine, you're a virtual, your Scrum Master work is virtual, a lot of it now. How has that changed, and how does that impact finding a job in this new market?
Sure, yeah. So now my physical network, so I used to be able to go to meetups in person, go to conferences, just go have coffee with somebody locally. Now, we can't do that. So it's all about creating that same environment, but online. So I know that at least in my area, a lot of the meetups have gone virtual. So you can still have that. And there's been a lot of things like this, like these live webinars. So, and they happen all the time. So it's really just getting plugged in online using, Agile or Scrum resources online. LinkedIn is a huge site to use to find all these opportunities and any live events. And it's really just getting plugged in online, joining like online community groups, meetups, lean coffees, whatever it may be, but just online. Yeah.
So and I agree with the LinkedIn thing and everything else she just said. And I'm, my friends always tell me that I should be in the FBI because I'm just find things out. They're always like, how do you know that? So what I would say about LinkedIn and using your network, I know a lot of people, we're virtual right now. And so they might say, well, like, I can't go here. I can't go there. I don't know anyone. And it's like, but you do. And so what I suggest people is, find those jobs on LinkedIn, like Catherine said, or Indeed, wherever they're posting, and go to that company's LinkedIn page or go to their website, find out who works there, go find them and connect with them, and always send a message. I encourage people to send a message if you don't actually know the person, just so they're not like, why are you adding me? But then what I also do is I kind of see, or the people that I personally know, like if I connect with someone and I see Chris is connected and he's maybe interacting with them and I'm interested in a job there, I might reach out to Chris and say, hey, I was interested in a job here. I saw that, their CTO, and Chris might say, well, we're not really friends like that. Or Chris might be like, yeah, that's my first cousin. I'll definitely pass your name along. You just never know. And so that's
my first cousin might not be, I've got some great first cousins. That might not be the first.
But you just never know how your network can help you. And I've gained a lot of connections just that way and helped, candidates get jobs that way. I might not know anybody, but I'll sure help you find somebody that does.
Right. So, Kim, I want to switch back to the script just a little bit, and let's talk about the interview. So we're talking a little bit about, potentially how to find it. We're going to do some more. I think we've got some different questions we want to pull in on that. But Kim, the interviews, you've got that metric ton of interviews that you've done. And I've been in some great Scrum Master interviews. I've been into some pretty horrific, war story interviews. Talk about the best Scrum Master interview you ever had. What made that different from the typical interview? And then on the other side, the flip of that, what was the worst Scrum Master interview story? Because, we all want to hear a little bit of.
Yeah, so I would say that probably the worst interview was someone who was just very rigid and talking about, well, you're not allowed to do sprints in this kind of time box, and they need to be shorter or longer. You're not allowed to change them, and different teams aren't allowed to have them. Another one was he specifically said, no, the product owner isn't allowed to have access to the team. So there were some things that they had been going about that may have been taught by other kinds of trainers. But really the rigidity of the Scrum Master. I'm here to enforce the rules. And Catherine talked about really being a Scrum Master and a servant leader. And it's really, you have to have both of those things. If you have somebody who's coming with all of this rigid rules and not listening to the teams and not actually trying to help the team, but really to abide by the laws, that's not going to really work out very well and helping in that gem of a Scrum Master. It's not going to help the hyper productiveness of the team. It's not going to help you get through organizational change. It's not going to help your product owner deliver the best products. But on the flip side, if you have someone who's coming in and doesn't even talk about like the events or the roles, but really is understanding of the values of Scrum and the values that are in the Agile Manifesto and the principles. But then you can clearly see that they tie together each one of the events within Scrum, or that they're tying together the roles, but understanding that they're really there as a team to help each other as a team. I had recently seen a video on LinkedIn, and there was a Scrum trainer who said, I talk to so many Scrum Masters who don't even know that there are values. And really being able to focus on the Scrum values, openness, courage, respect, and then focus and commitment. If I don't have those 5 things, then I'm really missing out on the overall heart of Scrum. So really being able to apply those things and to be able to kind of back up, like, why is it important for us to focus on the things that are on that gem of the Scrum Master? So show some energy. I have had Scrum Masters who have not been as animated as maybe myself and Catherine, because I know Catherine very well. And they can do well, but show your passion. Why is Scrum important to you? And why do you think that this is an important way for teams to work together?
Absolutely. And I love being passionate about it, being driven without being rigid. I love that insight there, because it's absolutely true. When I look at, again, kind of the difference between, a Scrum Master like Catherine that I've worked with and some others that I've experienced, honestly, so others that I have been in the past, when I'm learning and going through, and you're in that early stages of figuring it out, trying to figure out, how this works. There are 5 values. What does that mean? And how do we live by the values? And what makes that different is definitely a huge differentiator. So that experience. And Jennifer asks another question. I promise we're going to get to some other ones that weren't asked by Jennifer, even though the first 2 were. So Jennifer and Catherine, I'd like you to talk about this. How do we get a job if we've only had training and not actual experience? So you're in that maybe early stage of becoming a Scrum Master.
And I have been there, so I totally get it. So you just went through the training, and now what, right? So you're probably using Scrum in areas of your life, or at least those values that Kim had mentioned, the courage, focus, commitment, respect, openness, in areas of your life, and maybe you just didn't even know. So it's really, you could still take other jobs that you've had and think about, okay, how have I been a servant leader in this position? Or how have I used those 5 Scrum values or even 12 Agile principles in my past roles or even in my day-to-day life? I mean, before I fully got into it, I was doing Scrum in my house. Like, you know, my husband and I would come together and create a sprint and bring stuff in and just do it in our house. And that's how I was even able to practice it and get experience just from doing it at home. So you don't need to actually have, you know, a Scrum, like a huge extensive Scrum Master background. Just think about how you can apply it or how you have applied it in other jobs that you've had.
Catherine, that's really interesting on the personal side. I was at an oil and gas company, and the guy who was the internal coach that was kind of the leave behind, he'd not really ever done Scrum, but he did that same exact thing. He said, when I go mountain biking, I'll do a circuit and then I'll stop and I'll reflect and say, okay, what did I do and what do I need to do differently? But being able to even connect on, hey, I could get better at whatever it is that we're doing, and being open and vulnerable about where are the mistakes that you've made and what are you going to do differently next time you go about it.
So, sorry, I was looking at this one that John Lunsford just asked, and as a follow-up, and I want to dive a little bit into it. How does one succinctly communicate in an interview the dual approaches needed from Scrum Master and being firm yet flexible? Following up on the flexible and following up with that, we apply it in our personal life. We need to be firm, protect the team. Flexible, understand that, you know, you need a little bit of flexibility. How do you balance that?
Well, so I'll take a stab at that, Chris. I'll say that the biggest thing is really understanding for each of the rules that are in Scrum. So the 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, the 3, yeah, the 3 rules, the 5 events, the 3 artifacts, and the 5 values. So with each of those, understanding like what is the actual outcome that we're trying to get out of that. And if something doesn't make sense, for example, I had a team that was trying to close the books at the end of the month. There's a certain time frame of 4 or 5 days that they just have to be heads down and get their stuff done. And so I might have to be more flexible on my quote unquote time box of the sprint for that, because I can't take a half day in the middle of that to say, okay, now we're going to do planning and all of the events. But if we can understand, hey, I'm going to shift this time frame because of these things, and I understand what the outcome is, and I understand what the countermeasures are. So what are the things that I'm going to put into place to address those particular things? Then that is completely fine. Otherwise, you're going to have people who are saying, hey, we can't take a half day out in the middle of our busiest time of the month. So understand what the outcomes are for each of the rules. Why are those there? And then what are you going to do to make sure that you're still getting those things?
Absolutely. So we're going to go back on script for just a little bit. And I say just a little bit because we have so many questions coming in that I want to make sure we get to. Now, a bunch of them just disappeared. That's weird. But there's still 3 out there that we'll want to get to. So before we do that, Catherine, what's the most stressful part about getting your first job as Scrum Master? And what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Sure, yeah. Okay, yeah, so for me, one of the most stressful things was, am I good enough? Like, can I actually help this team become high performing, whatever job I was applying for? Especially going into it as being a newer Scrum Master, it's like, can I really do this? Also, a lot of the time, you may be helping teams who, 1, don't know Scrum, or 2, don't want to change. So, you know, going into an interview with maybe having that background is a little bit stressful. Like, how am I going to help and show these teams that using Scrum could actually really help and benefit them to become high performing? So that's definitely one of the most stressful things. I think going back and thinking about it, it would just be to have more confidence, because though maybe I was newer to Scrum, I still was embodying the Scrum values and doing, maybe I didn't call them a sprint planning event or I didn't call it a daily Scrum, but when I've been in servant leader positions helping teams, we were still doing those things. So it's really pulling out those experiences that you've had in the past and be like, okay, no, I can do this, and I have done this. So maybe I didn't call it Scrum, maybe I didn't call myself a Scrum Master, but really, I've had that experience.
Absolutely. And that, yeah, finding the places in your life where you're doing it. Something I've coached recently, your job search. Scrum your job search. When you're looking and you're out there, and so what are the things that you're going after? So what does your backlog look like? And is it prioritized? What's the first most important thing that's going to push you forward and create value? Getting that at the top of your list. Taking time to iterate and inspect and adapt. What am I doing to get better at it? And looking and then doing that and then sharing that when you're in that interview and having that confidence that Catherine's talking about, the ability to say that, you are good enough. And Amy Cuddy, there's a TED Talk you should watch. Just look up Amy Cuddy, Cuddy. Phenomenal TED Talk about faking it till you become it. And she does this, like, make the Wonder Woman pose. Everyone do the Wonder Woman pose. And that's going to be exactly the part of the video that my team is going to now put on social media. And you're going to see me doing Wonder Woman, but that's okay. So faking it till you become it, and realize that really, you're doing right when you're in a place where you don't feel you're good enough. When you're at that edge, because being at the edge of your ability is how you push yourself forward. And we all need to be there. Haley, to someone that is early in their career, what is some advice that you would give them on what they need? And you've given some really good insight around the networking and the making connections. The one most powerful thing that you can think of to help someone early in their career land their first job?
Whoa.
No pressure.
I would say the initial, so like Chris talked about a little bit, like actually searching for the job. And so something important to know or to think about when you are searching for your first job is, one, you need to get that first job first. I tell people all the time, like, that are new in either a new industry or they're just straight out of a training program or straight out of college, whatever it may be, is like, get your first job. And you don't want to be too narrow with that search. I mean, you want it to be relatable to what you want to do. Does it relate to your goals long term, those types of things, but don't focus on the salary or things like that. Sure, you need to be paid, but I find so many people focus on that salary. But I will say there are a lot of training programs in colleges and different sources that post some irritating information, in my opinion. The average salary of this is this, and it's just it's misleading. And so a lot of times those students get that in their head, and I say students, I apologize, but and so I try to steer people away from that type of thing. Again, you should get paid, but don't worry so much about that, because the amount of people I've seen get that first job and, they might stay there for 10 years, but after a year, guess what? You have that on your resume, you have experience, and then you can go and, kind of name your number, or go to a company that maybe you like a little better, or maybe you're a little better culture fit for, it aligns better with your goals. And so that's what I try to tell people. Don't focus on, the salary too much. And I'll continue to say, networking, tailor your resume to the job description, and have someone check your resume. Read your resume a trillion times. I've gotten so many resumes that the grammar was terrible, or the format, you could tell they were just super lazy. it matters. It really, really matters. So, I mean, just put yourself in the position of the hiring manager or whoever. You get 50 resumes. If there's one that looks terrible, you're not going to look at it.
Yep, absolutely.
So those are, think about your goals and your long-term goals and things like that. I think that your job should align with those, but I also try to encourage those looking for that first job to not get hung up on certain things, because
it's getting that it's much easier to find a job when you have a job. And that's just this weird thing about the way it is. Someone told me, used to have a really good friend, said the number one way to find girls is to have a girlfriend. And then all the other girls, great guy, Austin, way back in the day. But
and one more thing
having that.
Mention, I'm sorry, Chris. I cut you
off. No, you're fine.
This is more like once you get the interview, and Catherine talked a lot about this, like, she's sitting there thinking like, how am I going to get this first job? Like, I've never been a Scrum Master. And then she's like, oh, well, at this job, I did this. And even, in my house, I do this. Be prepared for those situational scenario type questions. Be prepared to answer, questions like, tell me about a time that you've used Scrum in your personal life, whatever. It's just an example, but it could happen. I think that I've been to a lot of professional development sessions that were not led by me, that were just led by someone that is been teaching the same curriculum for 60 years, it seems like. And they give you these generic questions of, you've probably heard before, what are your strengths and weaknesses? That's not going to be asked in an interview. They might indirectly ask that question, but it's not going to be phrased that way. And so I think that, again, a lot of misinformation, preparing for interviews, it's bothersome, because that doesn't tell the employer how you're truly going to contribute to that team. So that's
Kim, looks like you had a follow-up on that. Yeah.
So definitely what Haley was talking about, make sure that you go through the gem of the Scrum Master on the hyper productive teams or team dynamics. Make sure that you can explain, like, when did you have a team that was storming and how did you help them get through that? And that's not just in Scrum. Read through the Scrum Guide. Make sure that you understand the events, and again, relate each one of those events and each one of those roles to things that you've done in the past, even if they weren't in Scrum. And please read the Agile Manifesto as well. Make sure that you understand the relationship between Agile and Scrum, so that you're not getting those things mixed up.
Yeah, using the right terms is one. It's really important. So that if you come to me and you're interviewing for a Scrum Master or a product owner and you talk about grooming the backlog, then I'm going to take about 5 points off of your score, because you're using terms that aren't used anymore. And now daily stand-up, that one, like, I'm a little more patient with things like that, but not knowing that the terms have changed means you haven't read the Scrum Guide recently. And we're always getting better, so things are always changing, and at some point there's going to be another release to the Scrum Guide, and it might not be the 353 anymore. It might be the something different. We'll see. But we're always learning, we're always getting better, and if you're using terms that are obviously out of date, or you're not familiar with things out of the Agile Manifesto, that's going to really kind of ding you, and it's definitely dinged most of the people that I haven't given a job because of the interview. That would be one of the things. I do want to hit a couple of these questions, and I'm going to tie them together. The question is actually in our chat, is how does someone who is certified get an entry-level job? Most job postings are asking for 10 plus years experience. Some are even asking for a master's or even a PhD, and holy good grief, I want to talk to people that need a PhD Scrum Master, because that's one messed up team. But personally, I'm open to volunteering my time to get that experience, but what's that path for landing the first gig? And Catherine, I know we talked a little bit about this. the other day.
Yeah, so it's okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, if a company, never mind, that's a different thing. If they're asking you to have a PhD. So you have your certification, you're going for your first job. Gosh, let me just take a second to think about that.
Kim, why don't you do a little bit of give Catherine a little bit to think through, because I sprung that question on her.
No,
So
that's okay. I mean, I would take it back to all of the things that we've discussed, leveraging that network, looking on LinkedIn, Indeed, and whatever other platforms there are for jobs, but also being very clear when the job posting says it's an agile project manager, that it's probably not really a Scrum Master role. It's probably some sort of bastardized version of that. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on here.
you said it anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah. And so leverage that network, reach out to the people wherever you can. As Haley said, try to find people that you have in connection with them, and then be able to connect. But show how you're actually working and participating in the Agile community, if at all you can. There was someone in Cincinnati who had not had any Agile experience, but she was like, hey, I'm really interested in this. She had typically been a business analyst. So she said, hey, I'll volunteer for this and really get into this whole Scrum thing, and was able to land a really awesome gig after that. So as we've talked about, leverage that network, translate your previous experience into the Scrum stuff. And as long as you can show that you're open to feedback and that you're open to changing and willing to make some changes, most of that is really what we're looking for when we're hiring Scrum Masters.
Yeah, and I do have a point to piggyback off of that. You know, I've seen a lot of job applications that say, hey, 10 plus years in Scrum. A lot of these companies that are posting that probably don't even know too much about Scrum, but know that it's like this way to go and we should be doing this. And so I would say just apply for it anyway. I've definitely applied to positions where it says, you know, 15 plus years, but okay, maybe I've had one, because they're gonna know your personality, you know. It really comes down to just how you present yourself, your personality. I wouldn't harp on it and pass an opportunity just because it says 10 plus years, because they might even not really, they might say that, but not really truly even understand what that is, you know. And if you can explain what maybe you've done in the past to help teams become high performing, that will probably show a lot than saying, oh, I have 10 plus years in having this certification that maybe I haven't even used, really, you know.
Well, and it's interesting because a lot of times companies are just giving the hiring to a recruiter. And if you're recruiters, any recruiters that listen to this, get your Scrum certification. If you're going to be hiring these positions, go understand what it is, because it blows my mind when I'm contacted by recruiters and they're saying these things that just, they like, no, that's not right. That's not how that works. And a lot of times those job postings, that's what they are. Apply anyway and do a little bit of legwork. Find out who the actual hiring manager is. Now, you might have to get a little bit sneaky, figure out who the recruiters are and see who they're connected to and look for the job titles. You might find job titles such as, you know, it might be director of development or software development if it's a software company. It might be project management office if it's a more stoic kind of company. Watch those because they might actually be doing Agile potentially. Find the different job titles and then see if you're connected to them. So that way you can, you know, you don't want to get around the recruiters, but sometimes the recruiters, they have a huge backlog they're trying to do and they're working and just rushing through. And I've had to read through thousands of resumes for one job I had. And literally it's like, I look at it, all right, nope. You know, 30 seconds later, I'm going through to try to find those resumes that are just different. So sometimes you need to get around to the person that's actually doing it and make that introduction or get the introduction.
And funny story about the 10 years experience. About 5 years ago, I was helping someone on their job search, and I'm always of the mindset, I don't care what it says, apply for the job if you're interested. Like, who cares what's going to happen? They're going to tell you no, or maybe it's a but this was about 5 years ago, and the job description literally said that you needed 15 years of MongoDB experience. Well, at the time, now it's not even been out for 15 years. And I'm like, okay, well, just apply. So like Chris said, you never know who's writing those job descriptions. You never know who's hiring for them. And so apply anyway. And then part of the question that was asked was, I'm open to volunteering my time. So I think that's great, but be careful how you approach that. I've had candidates before basically like crawling to all these companies saying, I'll work for free. I'll work for free. It's kind of a bad look because they're like, why you want to work for free? Like, it's kind of like, I mean, are you even, because a company is not going to want you to work on something very important to them if you're not skilled, or if you're just willing to give your time up for free. So there's better ways to approach that. But I'm not against volunteering, but you shouldn't just.
Well, finding the right place to volunteer. Are you volunteering at a nonprofit where it's more expected? So the question was, do you need a technical background? Absolutely not. Even if you're on a dev team, you might want to understand some terms, but a Scrum Master is about process. So when I'm interviewing, I want a human-focused person that is really about challenging their team, protecting them from themselves, protecting them from organizational leadership. And that's way less about the technical side, because you want your team to be the ones that are experts in that. And there's Scrum done across all sorts of industries. Kim has all sorts of stories from non-technical companies. So human focused. Now, understanding skills, if you're going to be using a tool like Azure DevOps or Jira, you'll need to figure out how to work through that. But that's really secondary at the end of the day to the human side.
Hey, Chris, can I take a stab at this contractor versus employee-based thing? So I would say that this has been a typical question over the last 5 to 10 years. And there are lots of what I'll call body shops that will provide all kinds of Scrum Masters to big companies as they're starting to roll out Scrum and Agile. So for the company, it's safer for them. I'll say safer for them because they're not committing to that full-time W-2 role. And so if you're willing and able to do some sort of contractor role, it's not a bad gig. You typically get paid pretty nicely for doing those contractor roles, and it allows you to kind of date that employer for a little while to see, is this something that we actually want to do as well? So it's not that the company hasn't necessarily bought all into this, it's that they're trying to figure out, hey, how can I bring up this skill set? I was leading a transformation at a large manufacturing organization, and we had all of these people who didn't have any Scrum experience, and then we brought in all of these contract to hire people, and we basically had them buddy. And we said, you know about the company, you know about Scrum, how can we work together so that you can build the network within the company and understand some of the policies and procedures and the culture here while you're helping the others with bringing in Scrum. So I would say, yes, go out there, look for Scrum Master jobs. There are definitely Scrum Master jobs that are out there. Stay away from those ones that say Agile Project Manager, because they're probably the people that Catherine were talking about that don't even know what Scrum is, but hey, yeah, I think I should hire one of them. And just be understanding of, what the company is doing, and, go talk to other people who are at that company and see what it's like, and see if they really do abide by the Scrum values.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. I am off mute. Sorry, I just muted myself. I got my question and answer thing right over the top of just the place where I can't see my normal mute icon. But yeah, going out there, applying, figuring out why are they wanting to do the contract, and then dating a company for a while, I think is a really powerful way to kind of get in there and get to know everyone. I want to switch to the last couple, and let's do the difference between the Scrum Master and Agile Coach in less than 30 seconds. Kim, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Well, I would say that the Scrum Master is hopefully focused on a specific team, maybe two teams, and I say that like with whereas the coach is really helping probably multiple teams or multiple areas of the organization with being able to do better Scrum.
Awesome. And the last one that's in the list, and then I want to make sure we get some time to close out. What are the main companies that are looking to hire Scrum Masters? And is Scrum Master the job title to search for when I'm looking, or are there other titles that you need to be looking for?
I know in Denver there's tons of Scrum Master jobs.
Yeah.
I think one in Birmingham as well. When I looked at Indeed, a few thousand throughout the United States. Kim, or Catherine, you're about to.
I was just gonna say, honestly, I feel like so many, if not like every domain is hiring right now for Scrum Masters. So I don't think there's any it's not just IT. Everyone is starting to do Scrum or has done it. So it's just everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's interesting because, in Birmingham, you'd go to the normal, for those that are in Birmingham that are here, you might be looking at a large bank, BBVA, Regions, Protective Life is a large insurance company. You could go through the list. McLeod Software is a software development shop. There's a lot of different people, but we're no longer limited to local again. So can you go to a Denver Agile meetup? They're probably virtual now. And
on Thursday, I'm talking.
I need to be there. So yeah, find those places because it's no longer your job market is not there, and the Scrum Master role is vital. It's absolutely vital as companies are expanding and doing more work remote, and you're trying to build high performing teams when all of a sudden everyone is remote, and saying that's been the last 8 months of my life in working through that. It's complicated, and the Scrum Master is so critical in that. And so you have a huge opportunity out there in people that are looking. It does change how you network, and you have to network at a much larger level. As far as companies, look at the companies that are sending people to those meetups. So find a region and who are the companies that are going to the Agile Denver or Agile Birmingham, or where are those companies, and then that'll give you an idea of who's looking and who values good Agilists. This is our last minute. So I want to take just a little bit to thank everyone that attended. Thank you for our panelists that have come and it's been phenomenal in sharing your insight in such a critical thing. Following up with this, you'll receive an email from us that will give a 20% off coupon to an upcoming class. Actually, 2 will be taught this month. Kim will be teaching. Oh, yeah, that side of me. That. Cool thing that we're doing now, we have a Saturday class that'll be taught across 2 Saturdays. We have a weekday morning class, and we're also able to do payment plans. We're realizing that as people are looking for jobs, we're hearing a lot that, dropping, the large amount of money for a Scrum class, we want to make sure it's more accessible and open. So we have a really easy way. If you're interested in any of that, please reach out. We'll send that 20% coupon, and all you have to do is just fill out the survey that talks and gives some feedback, because we love Scrum and Agile, and Agile's all about feedback and iteration and getting better so we can be better next time. Thank you, everyone. It's 1 o'clock. We are wrapped.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Haley.
Thank you all.
Bye.